A very good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the Renaissance Investors and Analysts meeting for Q3 2020. For all of you who are familiar with our format, I'm here with my colleague, the CFO, Vishal Goenka, myself, Stephen Thomas, the CEO, and we are here to answer any questions that you may have now that we have published our Q3 results, along with the chairman's statement that accompanies that. So we're open for any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. You can post your question or you can just put your hands up. So first question comes from Sundar. Sundar, please speak. You can unmute, Sundar, and can speak and ask the question.
Hi, good afternoon, Vishal and Steve, for the call. Thank you again for the call. I will start off with a couple of questions and then I will come back to have more questions. The first is on the Dukum operations. We just want to understand, because the chairman's statement says that there is an improvement in the Dukum operations. We just want to understand how the current occupancy levels of Dukum and what is your outlook for the coming quarters. This is regarding to the question on the existing operation, but in terms of the expansion, how is the progress now? And I believe the second phase, which is coming up for expansion, is kind of delayed. We need to understand on your phases of expansion in terms of the Dukum project. This is related to Dukum. And my second question is on the overall, I would say the cost factor, because last time when we said the cost factor has been, you're talking about $1 million real every month impact due to this COVID. With the things getting more opening up, do you see that impact of this cost to be lower? We just want to understand from your perspective on how this cost factor has reduced during these last 2 months and also going forward. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Sundar. First of all, to talk about Dukum occupancy, I think as explained in the chairman's statement, at the start of this, we were on a steady climb and at around 16,000 occupancy. During COVID, that fell to the sort of the low point of lockdown when we weren't taking anybody else in the interest of keeping everybody safe. And of course, people had thinned out in Dukum at the time. We went down to 10,500, and that has come back slowly to around 12,000. So it'll fluctuate between 11,500, 12,500 at the moment. Now, the situation for the final quarter is fluid, because there are two things. One of the issues that is preventing a more rapid build-up is part of the regulations, of course, in the interest of keeping us all safe. There are no labor clearances and visas being issued at the moment. There are some rare occasions of exemptions, but for the kind of numbers that the EPC contractors and their subcontractors need to bring in, there is no movement at the moment. So if we see a relaxation, and there's talk that it's being reviewed in the labor clearances and visa situation for the project, and there's also discussions around exemption for the project. That is not a matter for us, that's a matter for the refinery and their contractors. Then we would see a steady climb, but we're assuming for the moment that there won't be movement immediately, but that could change within 24 hours. Now, of course, after that, they have to go through the process of getting the visas and labor clearances, etc. So there's a process to follow. But we so in the meantime, the refinery has announced that there is a delay. And so they're accepting the fact that there's that delay. And this starts me on the answer on expansion. Our expansion program is very much on time and in cost, most importantly. But we have been staggering it along with the what's happening in terms of the projects and the occupancy. So this is our phase 1 expansion, an element of phase 2 with the additional senior executive accommodation we're putting in. We're not going to move on to phase 3 unless and until there's visibility on the spike. So all of that is very much in hand, and we're going to take possession of the first rooms on expansion during this month, in the next month, and then staggered 2 buildings at a time very quickly will follow through December and January. So we're very much on track with that. We were meeting yesterday with some of the EPC contractors who want to be sure that as soon as they get triggered, that they can start bringing in their additional people to speed up the refinery, then that we will have the space for them. So everyone's very comfortable with that. So both on the need for them to bring in more people and that we will have the space for them. The issue, of course, with the delay in refinery, there's progress even with lower occupancy. And so whilst they're now talking about 6 to 9 months possible delay, and it's all COVID permitting as well as to whether that goes longer, we have the prospect of having fewer people for longer rather than more people for shorter. And so that's what we're discussing and monitoring with our customers. But the prognosis on occupancy is very positive as soon as these restrictions are lifted. And in the meantime, we're continuing to perform well at around this 12,000 occupancy. So Vishal, is there anything else you wanted to add to that? Oh, sorry, the COVID impact. You can see that, well, actually, Vishal, you can take that, but you can see how we have improved on that, Sundar. That $1 million reals a month was very real at the start. And of course, we were also doing our In Service of the Nation program at that time to all the quarantine centers and outbreak centers, etc. So there's that is now not required at the same level, but there have been some significant improvements where everyone in the organization, from the supply line through to the operations, have really been working hard to make sure that we maintain our high standards, keep people safe, and there's extra costs involved in doing that, but at the same time doing it very efficiently. So that impact is coming down. Vishal, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Thanks, Steve. So on Dukkam, you have covered very well that how long-term occupancy for Dukkam and our project is very much intact. And just to add on there, that 12,000 people are still staying in our accommodation. And on the margin side, when you look at the 12,000 people staying and the overall margin for Renaissance, even after taking COVID impact, is almost in line with the last year. So when you see our financial last year, we were producing 19% GP, despite all the hit of COVID, where we provided all extra services to our customers, free meals to as part of our In Service of the Nation program, still we were able to maintain our margin. So as an operations company has done really well. And we feel that post-COVID, even the margins will start improving overall. So Dukam is very much intact. We have made our payment plan in such a manner so that the contractors are paid on time, but it's not that property is ready and we don't have an occupancy. So everything is planned in line with how COVID was coming and impacting us in Dukam. So we are very optimistic about the way Dukam is spanning out in the future.
Yeah. And so, Sundar, I'm moving the answer one step further from that. Vishal's mentioning the COVID issues there. And so going a little bit beyond your question, but it's relevant and it stems from your question. And I don't want this to sound as if we are being arrogant or boastful, because we're not. We accept our place in all of this. But I'm using the words of our customers where they are delighted with the way we have handled COVID from all the stuff. And I know we spoke about this at the last quarter where we put in the thermal detection. We've got the social distancing protocols, longer dining hours, packed meals to thin out in diners and so on. A whole range of actual sanitizing chambers to walk through as you go into the diners, and a whole range of things that we've done. And the result of that is we have suppressed the virus inside Renaissance Village Dukam. And indeed, this is true of other operations where we work for clients elsewhere around the oil and gas fields and other such places. Our absolute suppression of the virus by these means has been brought to our attention with much appreciation from our clients. So I want to say this is words coming from them, not me sounding boastful. And it's terribly important. And the first thing we said, I'm now going back to the first quarter, we've had a list of 7 priorities, and the first priority was about keeping our people and our customers safe and protecting them from harm in this pandemic. And I'm very, very proud of everyone on our team who have really helped deliver this. And against that background, there is the incidence, the very high incidence of COVID outbreak in workforce camps without these kind of measures in place. And, the whole debate is out now from municipalities and other authorities about how people are living in other, and, in and around Dukam, there'll be people opting to do other things. That's being brought under great scrutiny now because even the international lenders are very, very specific about what the minimum standards should be for workforce in Dukam. And we comply. And we almost uniquely comply. So, there are events taking place in Dukam next week that will be looking at this. So I think the prognosis for us as the solution in Dukam is very, very strong and very good. And that's what Vishal was referring to as well in his prognosis on the long-term occupancy. So thank you, Sundar.
Thank you, Steve. One thing I want to just add up, in terms of the receivable position, Vishal was making, the collections were pretty good. I just want to understand how this position, I've been seeing the numbers are pretty okay, but still I want to understand from your perspective how the government payments, everything is happening, anything surprising expected in Q4. We just want to understand from an IFRS 9 perspective. Thank you.
Sure. I'll give you the headlines of it. The reason I'm stepping in here is because I actually want to highlight the work that Vishal and various teams that he guides in this and leads on this issue of collection and what's been achieved. We have collected the equivalent or slightly more than the equivalent of our entire revenue this year. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have some delayed receivables. We do. And I don't want to speak about specific clients. I will say something generally about government, where the government has acknowledged, not just for us, but talking about the market in general, that there is an issue with delayed payment and that they are working hard to get 80% of that up to date and finished during this year. And the dialogue with us directly around that kind of debt is consistent with that statement that's been made generally. So without, because I think we all have to understand how difficult a period it is for everyone, really two main features. One, extraordinarily good collection. Now, ultimately, contractors working in PDO oil fields or BP or in Duqm are all on projects that are fully financed and being paid on time by the likes of Duqm Refinery and the likes of PDO or the likes of BP, etc. So that side was very strong cash flow. On the government side, where there has been general delay in the marketplace, they really are genuinely working on an 80% catch up. And then there's sort of miscellaneous other things around that. So our receivables, given the market that we're in, and I'm not saying it's not tough. I'm not saying that there's not a huge amount of effort that goes into getting that kind of performance on our receivables by our team. But it is as positive a statement as one could make in this incredibly difficult time for the whole economy. Vishal, anything further?
Thanks, Steve. You have covered everything. So just to add 2 points here, Sundar, because of good collection, we were able to save finance costs. So one of the reasons of lower finance costs this year is better collection. So that you can see, and then directly it is filtering through our P&L as well. Second is the cultural change in how we used to manage our receivables, or how entire country used to manage receivables. Everyone was used to receiving hard copies of the invoice, stamping it, taking it back. And people were still in two minds how to change in the environment. But our IT system and the way our collection team worked together, we moved on cultural change, where people are accepting electronic invoices and certifying electronically. So that really helped us. So it was collection and the cultural change what we have achieved during this time. And that's the reason we can see that our overdraft or utilization is almost nil because of better collection. And as Steve correctly mentioned, that in 1 or 2 accounts, which are government-led accounts, those we are accepting even 80% or more recovery by the year end. So even our cash position should improve further. The reason in cash, one of the reasons why we are still able to manage our entire expansion plan without raising a single debt, because we didn't want to launch a debt program in the midst of the COVID. So better collection also helped us to support that. Now we have launched our debt program because the market has improved, sentiments are okay. And we will talk about that debt program for the financing later on. But better collection helped us in many, many ways. So that we are really happy about it as a company.
Well, thanks, Vishal. And Steve, I'll come back to you later. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Sundar.
So, Samir, you can ask your question. Samir, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, thanks Vishal and Steve for the call. I have a couple of questions. Just to follow up on Sundar's questions, so what percentage of the Dukum village revenue comes from the Dukum refinery? Any ballpark number?
I won't talk revenues. I'll sort of talk generally in terms of the occupancy numbers there. We have, of that 12,000, at the moment, there is about 4,500 come from either permanent projects that are in the Dukum area and other clients associated with those projects. And the balance comes from Dukum refinery. Those associated with the permanent projects and sort of building up sustainable occupancy is also on the increase. And there are some other short-term projects for some of those that are coming in as well. So that balance will change at different points of time, but that's what it is at the moment.
Okay, understood. In your last call, you mentioned about the September month. You were expecting some military project. So is it done? And is this 12,500 include those military projects as well?
Yes. Again, I sometimes wonder what we're allowed to say and not allowed to say when it comes to some of these clients of ours. But yes, we do have the UK military staying with us now, and they are going to be with us for 9 months, and they're already fully occupied and very happy. So I'm pleased to say. So yes, whether I should be saying that in more than that, I don't know.
Understood, sir. Also, I have one more question. In the last two chairman's report, it is highlighting the existence of non-compliant workforce accommodation in Oman. Could you elaborate a little more on how big the issue of non-compliant competitors are, and what potential are you expecting from a shift from these players to compliant company like Renaissance?
So again, I don't want to talk about competitors, but let's talk about the facts of what goes on. Now, first of all, around it, this is not exclusive to Oman. There's issues around workforce accommodation, worker welfare. In many countries and throughout the Gulf, etc. Oman has very clear and good standards laid out. I mean, the Ministry of Manpower is aligned with International Labour Organization standards. And this sets out things like how many square meters should be in shared accommodation around every bed. It sets out the ratios of how many ablution facilities you should have for each of a resident. It sets out the type of recreation and medical care availability, etc., that one should have on site when you get up to large numbers, etc. And Ministry of Manpower has all of those standards. Then there are many great companies, the leading companies in Oman's oil and gas sector, the leading projects like Dukum Refinery, etc., like the port of Dukum and so on, all have high spec standards, not high in the sense of that will make them uncompetitive. And CSAD has those standards too, and has laid out those things. So the framework for the correct way to look after a workforce is there. And so my comments in answering your questions, Samir, are not to in any way knock either Oman or the responsible leading projects and companies in Oman who have laid out what is required. Now, what happens in reality is there will always be some people who short circuit the system. And, we saw it in the early stages of the outbreak of COVID here. A lot of it happened either in workforce camps or in apartment buildings where large numbers of workers had been crammed into apartments. Some astonishing numbers from some quite small spaces and how many people were living there. And that's where the outbreak was sort of became uncontrollable at first. And it's all about the sanitary. I mean, the amount I was describing what we've done in terms of keeping people safe. I haven't gone into our sanitizing program and the PPE and what we do and how we keep everything clean anyway, but now ultra sanitizing anything that are touch points for our residents. So those kind of standards don't necessarily apply in these examples. And what that has brought into sharp relief and therefore referred to in the chairman's statement is the conversations being had here by worker organizations, by municipalities, by clients. We've got international lenders for projects coming to visit our facilities to make sure that people are compliant. The ILO themselves been to all of our packs and they've been to Dukum, etc., and we passed with flying colors. So I think we're aware with it's not about naming names. It's about, we know that there are in existence some camps and some residential accommodation that is used that does not in any way comply with these minimum standards for worker welfare. And when you get something like a pandemic, it is no surprise that that's where people get struck down in largest numbers and fast. So it's just that the pandemic has brought it into sharp relief. And where we as an organization stand in a good position is we've demonstrated by our economies of scale that you can deliver these kind of standards at affordable cost. And that the benefits that come to those companies that do look after their people in this way, they are finding themselves with far less downtime for sickness, far less attrition, greater productivity because of people are happy, they've got great connections with home, they're getting a good night's sleep in clean facilities, and they've got recreation and so on, and they're able to keep fit and well. So that's the debate that is very much going on around in a post-COVID environment, and that's what's being referred to by this. Thank you, Samir.
Thanks, Steve, for such a elaborate answer. I have a couple of questions further. Maybe I'll come back later. Thank you.
Joyce, you had some questions. Earlier, I could see that you wanted to ask some questions, Joyce. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Vishal, and thank you, Steve, for the call. My first question is regarding the PDO Manasil project. Where are we on that? Is there any significant progress that is worth mentioning during this last quarter or this quarter? Because what I understand is the original plan was for the commercial submission to be around fourth quarter of this year. So can you just give us some update on that?
Yes, I will, Joyce, although it is a live tender, so I'm really going to keep it as a minimum information as possible. The technical bid has closed, it's gone in recent weeks. And that is currently being analyzed, and there will be clarifications coming out to ourselves and other bidders if clarifications are required. and the commercial bid is still on schedule to go in this fourth quarter. It's due to go in December. So they seem to be very much on schedule for that. And then the decision is due to be taken in the first quarter of next year. So it's a live tender, so please don't ask me anything more, but that's the status.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you very much. So we don't expect any major delay in awarding that.
Yes, it's very much on schedule and going fine.
Good to know. Thank you very much.
If anyone has any question, please put your hands up. So Shaleen, you can ask your question. Go ahead, Shaleen.
Hi. Thank you, Vishal and Steve, for the call. This is just, I would just like to go back to your chairman's report. You spoke about expected gradual improvements in November and December. Could you further expand on that statement, especially on the improvements expected during this period?
Sure. It's partly in reference to what I've answered already, is that we've been given clear indications of a surge in occupancy expected in Dukkam. But as I explained earlier, that is coming slowly because of the situation with visas and labor clearances. So that's one part of that. But there is other gradual improvement anyway, but that would have been something that if it still does happen, even for 1 month, would have a very positive effect. It may be that we don't see that till January, but they're certainly ready and chomping at the bit to go. We were meeting with some of those clients only yesterday.
And Shaheen, one more point to add, that in our contract services business, where we operate MOH, hospitals, LNG, Salalah Port, BP, now with slowly things are opening up, our cafeterias in MOH will start opening up. So gradual improvements we will see in our pure contract services business, which was a major hit during the pandemic times, especially in the eye of a storm. So that also we are seeing slowly coming up, and November and December we are seeing positive results in that business as well. So one is Dukkam occupancy, second is in contract services. We are seeing improvements in these 2 months.
Yeah, things that were closed, schools starting slowly to open and so on. The UK military coming in, etc. So there are a range of things that will bring gradual improvement, and that sort of quantum difference can still come with the surge in the project occupancy.
Okay, I just have one more question to go. There's also been a lot of positive chatter, especially on the buzz that's actually happening in Dukkam. Now, you guys being on the ground, what is the perspective? How real is the buzz?
You mean the buzz around projects in Dukkam?
That's correct, Steve.
Yeah. So there are two things. So there's one, if you like, disappointing piece of news, the disappointing buzz, is the fact that OQ have paused the FEED work on the petchem project. Now, that is partly because of the delay in refinery, and they ideally want petchem to happen as refinery comes to a close. But the reality that petchem is for them a must-have project because it provides the value add and the rationale for having built the refinery remains the case, but there is clearly a pause while they re-evaluate which bits of that project are going to be most viable in the current market conditions, the third cracker, etc. So that's a sort of a slowing down issue. The other projects that you're referring to, and I like the word buzz that you brought there, Sheen, is that the cement projects, the green refinery is early stages, but it's on the move. From Canada, the Canadians coming in with that. There are smaller projects actually happening with, Modena building the family accommodation for the refinery and so on. ISCAN have got the design up for their academic city. Now, all of these we follow. We don't factor in occupancy for them until contract awards start going out and so on, and we get some actual numbers. But there's some very positive buzz around that. And of course, His Majesty, as part of the reshuffle, has brought all the free zones together under one new authority called OPAS. And so we have all our friends from the CZAD part of that. But it is very clear from His Excellency, the Chairman of OPAS, that Duqm is a huge part of their plans. And so there's very positive buzz around that. There's positive buzz coming around some tourist-related initiatives and initiatives to start creating some of the facilities that would attract more families down to Duqm as well. So for hospitals, schools, more housing, etc. All of that means projects for us. That's it. Bit of disappointment on the petchem side and lots of buzz. Only when they become actual projects with people will we add them to our numbers. Thank you.
Understood. Understood. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
You know, one of the things around positive news in such a negative year, I mean, for everyone, I'm sure everyone on this call has been affected in some way by what's going on. The one thing that still seems to always bold line and length is that, as Oman seeks to diversify its economy and look to the future, yes, it has to be affordable, etc., in the current oil price environment, etc. The one thing that always comes very high on the list, the top of the list, is Duqm. Yes, of course, there are good things going to happen around Sohar, around Salalah, around Sur as well. But the biggest activity, so all, the pipelines are still being built as we speak. The tank farms still being built out at Ras Markaz for this. The infrastructure of electricity and water in Duqm to meet the needs of the future petrochemical businesses in the heavy industry and light is all still happening in Duqm. So the buzz is real in that sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Samir, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I have 3 more questions. First, on your PDO, what's the current occupancy level at PDO? And the second question is on any of your clients negotiating for a lower room rate? And third part is that any major competition you are expecting either in Duqm or any other in any of your business?
Sure. So on the first point, The occupancy, I'll just give a general occupancy because it's actually slightly different in the various areas. But occupancy has held up pretty well in the oil fields. So not, we could have expected it to be in the higher 90s, and it's been in the higher 80s to 91 sort of average so far. So doing absolutely fine in that respect. And again, this has been a very important factor, that the work we do to keep people safe and fed and watered and housed in COVID conditions without having an outbreak means that we can keep our customers' businesses going, whether it's an oil field or a gas field or a project. And that has been very important. The whole issue around people asking for discounts, right at the start of the year, I mean, this very general point made by government, made by PDO, made by others is we need a 30% discount to react to the change in oil price. And so those negotiations started way back then and have gone on, and there are still people looking for how can we provide, the services we do. They want the same standards, but how do we do it at a lower rate? And I want to be a little careful with that without giving detail because of the competitive landscape. We have engaged with every client who has wanted to discuss this subject. And of course, we do not go round, particularly on the pure services contracts, with 30% margins, so that we can give that away when these things happen. But what we have been able to do is work with clients to show them, well, if we did this in a different way, we could find you a saving. And so that has happened. One of our military contracts, we gave quite a chunky saving, not 30%, quite a chunky saving, because they were prepared to concede on some contractual points that were costing them more, and that if we didn't have to do it that way, they could still get the service they want and it would cost them less. So sharing those things with clients doesn't affect our performance. So similarly, in the oil fields, there's been a very long debate around this, and it is coming to a close. And we will be making some small quid pro quo concessions. So by quid pro quo, I mean, if you allow us to reduce this cost, we can share it with you. And so these will be minor percentage changes, but we will be saving the equivalent cost in that. It's a big issue on the
Sunil, what Steve mentioned, that you can see in our bottom line as well. Why we are able to hold our margins, because when you start discussion with the client and you explain to them, yes, there could be some savings, but then how we do the menu engineering, what we can do, can we replace with some branded items with some other items which are equally good, but then in the good times or high times, no one looked at it. So when you come back and guide your client in that fashion, they are very open to discuss those things and accept it. And that's where the pricing for them came down. But for us, it didn't hit the bottom line in that fashion because our cost also came down in that sense. Yeah.
We've also, every single contract of ours, and includes a major one in the gas fields, let me say that, hint, hint, have been out for retender because it was due at that. And of course, they have to, in terms of state audit and everything, go through that process quite correctly. In all cases, we have won and retained our business. And in those processes as well, we've looked at ways that we can, find a saving that they agree and pass some of that through to them so that they get the same level of service, but a slightly better cost. On the competitive landscape, there are two things to say, really. One is to remind you that we have an exclusivity period for our type of project in Dukum, and that runs through till 2027, where there will be no compete of the same type of project. We do, as we always did with the packs as well, have to fight some issues of people, putting a camp outside the zone or whatever. There's some issues of that nature, but these, I think, are being dealt with under the standards issue that we've already discussed in this call. In PDO, the competition is around Manazil, and what's happening with Manazil is, of course, a whole new slew of opportunity is coming to the fore with the places that don't have packs and where there still are tax, as they call the temporary accommodation, will be all coming in, and where they need to replace the old assets of the PDO camps and so on. And so that's being, if you like, privatized. I know PDO is a private company, but you know what I mean. And so, of course, there's competition around that. There are 7 people qualified for that tender, and there's a lot of aggressive competition will happen around it. But we are also always cautiously optimistic that we will be a serious contender for that.
Understood, Vishal and Steve. Just one follow-up question on that Manazil project. So you are looking for a partner, similar to the Dukum project, right?
We have pre-qualified unilaterally as Renaissance. But absolutely, it is our intention in terms of so 100% of the operation will be provided by us. We have all the IFM capabilities and the soft services and hard services capabilities to be able to self-perform everything that's required there. What we will definitely do with the property side, the same as we did in Dukum, is we will be looking at, we've already had great interest from our existing partners who are very happy with the investment they've made with us in Dukum and want to participate in Manazil. We've had a lot of interest from local community organizations and super LCCs interested in participating. And what we've done with them is we've told them it is premature, that we need to see if and what we win. And if we are successful, we will come back with very specific proposals. So, you can see the cash on our balance sheet, you can see what we're building up, and so our abilities, as well as a lot of interest and support from those constituencies that I've just described. So we will definitely be looking at that, Samir, yes.
All right, understood. Thanks a lot, guys.
If anyone has any questions, please put your hands up. So please go ahead, Muad. You want to ask a question? Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Stephen, and for the call. I have a question about the dividends. I'm sorry if you answered this before.
So Muad, you introduce yourself, from which institution, and then please ask the question.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm Muad Al-Belushi from Tanmiya, Oman National Investments Development Company.
Sure.
So I just had a question about the dividend outlook. Since you have quite a bit of expansion plans and increase in occupancy, so will that affect your dividends in the coming years?
So, Muad, what a good question. I think I need to just restate what our dividend policy is, and you will gather our intentions from that. And of course, the actual decision on dividends, whilst management may recommend, it will be a matter for our board to decide. But I know that the answer that Vishal and I will give you right now is absolutely aligned with our board. Now, we will always have this point about, we want to be a regular dividend paying company. That's our desire. We know during the issues with the offshore support vessel company and the issues in that industry prevented us from being able to sustain that record. But we declared very clearly after the divestment of that our desire is to be a regular and consistent payer of dividends. Of course, we do prioritize when we have investments that will bring opportunity and growth and long-term sustainable growth to the company. So there will always be that conflict. But our intention, and you can see in spite of this situation, we're still generating positive, positive cash flows, and our intentions will definitely be to look at that situation at the end of the year and to be making our recommendations to our board. And I know that our board has the same view, that they want to see our shareholders rewarded whenever it is prudent and possible to do so, and they want it to be a regular and consistent thing that we do each year. Vishal, is there anything more that should be said in relation to that?
No, Steve, you have summed up very well.
Thank you. That's understood. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Muad.
Thank you.
For such a tricky question.
So Muad, of course, as we mentioned on dividend, you can see the cash balance in the company. We have managed our Dukkam expansion well. And basically the major capital requirement is coming for Manasil. And Manasil is not like all the cash we won't need on day one. It is over a period of 2 years, 2.5 years. So everything is going on well for us, even in this COVID. And hopefully that will go well for our shareholders as well. So let's wait and watch because like Manasil is something which, of course, Renaissance is a very serious contender, and we will always go for it. Yeah, and we will always find equity. We will always find fund for such kind of the projects. So expansion will happen, and based on the cash flow visibility, dividend will be taken care as well. Exactly what Steve said.
Okay, I hope so. Thank you so much.
Anyone has any question? So 5 more minutes, last 5 more minutes. So we have Joyce. Go ahead,
Hi,
Joyce.
Vishal. Hi, Vishal. Thank you. My last question is on, we have quite a good firepower in terms of the cash balance which we are holding. So are we looking at any inorganic opportunities currently?
So basically, Joyce, if you look at it, Manazil, like, of course, this is very much organic, but you can also treat him as an inorganic as well, correct? Because it would require a huge investment of much more than 100 million real in that sense. So for us, this is organic because we know this business very well. This is on our sweet spot, but inorganic because such kind of opportunities don't come every day. Yeah, these comes once in a while. We have seen that our last PDO pack investment program was 10 years ago. Then we expanded some of the rooms, but such a major PDO pack investment opportunity is coming now. So we are keeping cash for that. And the cash will keep building up as our Dukkam occupancy goes up. Like PDO pack, of course, we are sustaining. So Manazil is an opportunity where we will really go with all our cash power.
Yeah, you know, Joyce, there are some other things. I mean, we've mentioned to you guys before that we, with our diversification of services and sectors, etc., that we would remain a services solutions company. We've got this core of these accommodation solutions that we build, own, and operate. So that's where the capital intensive stuff happens. But it gives us such long-term stability when we know that we've got sort of captive audience occupancies and so on. We were awarded some time ago the waste management, the waste collection. We do it in Worcester, we do it in CZAD for beer, and we were awarded the PDO project some time ago. Now, that has been on hold, partly COVID, partly working with PDO and beer to work out how much we could involve some local community contracting in that, which we've succeeded in doing, and that actually will pass out some of the CapEx requirement for that. But the good news is that that project is going to mobilize in the new year as well. So that's a new bit of organic business around our waste collection, now that that's part of our existing services. The other thing to look out for, I think, is that there is definitely a move when you look at the government's PPP intentions, when you look at the debate around workforce accommodation, etc., that this may well become a growth area in which we have a lot of experience. And should be able to compete. So whilst Manazil is the big one in terms of if we are successful, that will be a priority for us. But we've also got a few irons in the fire in some other areas. And all of that we are keeping in balance with Moan's question that we want to be a regular annual dividend payer as well. So we're juggling with each of those realities. But in spite of this very tough year, which of course has impacted us and had a negative impact, but we've still been able to, for our continuing business, been able to demonstrate year-on-year growth. I take no pleasure in saying we're probably one of the few that's able to do that. I wish that the whole economy was able to say that, and some people through no fault of their own have been badly affected by this pandemic. But we've managed our way through this, and there is more opportunity coming down the line. Now, how does any of us on this call predict how quickly those things materialize in 2021? Manazil is on program, so that will be an announcement, but it will then take 2 years to build, as Vishal already said, etc. But we'll be able to see what's coming down the line if successful. This beer contract is real. That's happening. So the other things, organic and inorganic, How quickly some of them will happen, we'll have to wait and see. But there are a number of areas of interest for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
So if there are no any questions, Steve, we can wrap up this session.
Well, to wrap up again, thank you everyone for your interest in our company and for the way you come here each quarter and ask us these questions. We hope that we've been able to answer them to your satisfaction. We look forward to talking to you at the end of the next quarter, which of course will be around our annual results, because it's will be the fourth quarter. And can we say, as you know, everyone looks with hope and optimism. You know, it's National Day tomorrow, so particularly for our Omani brothers and sisters, happy National Day. But I say happy National Day to everybody on the call, because Oman is that special place where everyone who is part of this feels very welcome and belonging. And with a lot of challenges in the economy and everything else, our company is coming through it in a very solid way, with strong cash flows, keeping all our obligations met and all our supply line and all our people properly paid and looked after and so on. So I hope that we can shine as a beacon of hope in this period. And I wish you all that you stay well and keep safe, because the pandemic's still with us, and look after yourselves and your loved ones. And we'll see you next quarter. Thank you very much.
Happy National Day. Stay safe, stay well. Bye.